Welcome to this Techies webinar. I am Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Akhil George. The two of us will moderate this discussion, which we are having in association with Optum. Optum is a global capability center, or GCC, of United Health Group, one of the world's largest healthcare organizations, and indeed one of the largest companies in the world. GCCs have today become the flagship of the Indian technology industry. We reported recently that in the last fiscal year, for the first time, GCCs hired more people than even the IT services segment, which traditionally has been the biggest hirer of Indian talent, tech talent. Even the latest economic survey released a day before the budget talked about the growing importance of GCCs to India's GDP and growth. Today, we're going to discuss this rise in the GCC ecosystem and try to understand the factors that are going into it and what will sustain this growth. And for this, we have with us two outstanding professionals. We have with us Ratnam Krishnan. Uma is Managing Director of Optum India. In this role, Uma oversees strategy, execution, delivery, and governance in close partnership with clients and global teams. She sets the vision for the company in India and helps teams deliver distinctive value across all businesses. Uma started a working life as a diplomat with the Indian Foreign Service. Prior to joining Optum, Uma served as the CEO and MD of Barclays Global Services. Over the last 3 decades, she has also held senior leadership roles in NatWest in the UK, ANZ, Greenlace Bank, HDFC Bank, and Polaris Software. Welcome, Uma.
Hi, Sujit. Thank you.
And we also have Prashray Khanna. Prashray is a partner in research and consulting firm Everest Group. Prashray is focused on workforce advisory and site selection decisions for technology and business service companies. And he advises GCC on driving a greater value addition. He also assists clients on topics related to increasing inclusivity and diversity in enterprises, quantification of business impact, and benchmarking of global delivery models. Prior to Everest Group, Prashray worked at I3 Consulting, where he was based out of multiple countries in the Middle East and North Africa. Welcome, Prashray.
Pleasure to be here, Akhil, Sujit.
So those who are viewing this can send in questions to the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I'll put them to our participants. So why don't we just jump into the webinar? Uma, maybe we can start with you. Give us an idea, how has value creation and maturity from GCCs evolved over the last few years? What are some of the key drivers of value creation for GCCs?
Yeah, no, thanks, Akhil. So look, stepping back a couple of decades, right, the Indian GCC industry has really evolved from cost arbitrage and talent arbitrage, which was the starting point. It moved then across to what I would call delivery excellence, which is, can you deliver at scale? And then once that got established, the global capability centers then moved one notch higher, which is to, managing multiple portfolios and taking ownership globally of, processes or functions or businesses to its current avatar, which I would actually call a GCC 4.0 sort of transformation innovation hub, right? So, and this journey has happened over the last couple of decades. And if you look at each phase of this journey, it's actually increasing value creation, right? And what has actually led to it? While talent is the underpinning of this growth and, the kind of talent and the capability and scale and flexibility of this talent has been underpinning the growth, what it's also happened is it's actually created an ecosystem. And today, many global companies look at the India Global Capability Centers as their transformation and innovation hub, which is to lead transformation globally for product development, technological breakthroughs and innovation, new product revenue and new revenue streams and new products. So it's really moved up the value chain and therefore is contributing economically, human capital, innovation, etc. For in Optum particularly, we've been present in India for over 2 decades. And over the 2 decades, we've actually evolved to become a strategic powerhouse that's actually quite integral to our parent organization, right? Some core levers which has driven value within the Optum world. One is having a very customer-centric mindset, right? It's not enough, particularly in healthcare. The consumer is at the center of the ecosystem. So we make sure that we understand the customer's ask. And as a result of that, we're actually creating better outcomes for customers. If we understand it, we're able to create the right products, services, and delivery. The second one is around advancing innovation, right? We bring the whole power of everything we have in the global capability centers to bear, which is technology, operations, and technology is just not about designing another app, right? We draw across the full length of our capabilities to connect people. Third, fundamental, nurturing our talent. We all know India has a fantastic pool of talent, young talent, STEM talent, physical sciences, pharma, clinical talent. So of this vast talent pool, we want to leverage, and we leverage that talent really well, right? So we have over 1.6 million people today in GCCs, and that's only expected to grow up. And the last one, I'd say, a value creator, a value lever, is working as one global team. If you need to create value and you need to drive innovation and strategic business growth, you need to understand the global business. You need to understand and work with our global teams. And in fact, what has happened as a result of that, we do have some global leadership roles out of India, and that's an increasing trend across all GCCs. So I think there are many things and many levers which create value, and we need to continue doing that because we can see the ecosystem growing. And for Optum particularly, these are some of the levers that have delivered the value.
Yeah, you started when, Uma? Optum in India?
2002.
2002. Okay. The last few years, I think you expanded very rapidly. Somebody told me Optum was one of the fastest growing in terms of headcount and all that the last few years.
We've grown significantly over the last several years. We've been there for a while, but I think the complexity and the amount of work that we do has increased in the last few years quite a lot.
Okay. Any example of a platform or something that you delivered out of here which had a big impact for you at G?
Yeah, so I'll pick one example of something called house calls, right? So one of our businesses is something which is called Optum Care. Now, Optum Care is something that delivers integrated healthcare. It's an engagement platform plus a healthcare delivery, which is we actually provide healthcare services through clinicians, through hospitals, to the patients in the US, right? And our job is to make sure that this is sort of joined up and we make the experience really seamless for our patients. So one of the things we do out of here, which we support out of here, is something called house calls. Now, house calls is pretty simple, which is we want to make sure for a certain category of patients and consumers, the experience is seamless. So pretty much sort of senior citizens, what we do is we make sure that with what we call value-based care, which is we want to integrate the care that we give people, give preventative care. So we actually, what we do is to drive something called, engagement with the individuals, where we actually engage with them, tell them, hey, these are all the things that are available. And we do proactive home visits, right? So all of that is actually driven from here in the sense that engagement is driven from here. The actual clinician goes to the house of the seniors or whoever that we are doing at preventative. And what that does is 2-3 things, and we do millions of these. What that does is it lowers the number of people who have to go to emergency. Even if they have to land up going to a hospital, the number of days they stay in the hospital is much lower. And then the follow-up care after they come home. So it's a full life cycle and it's integrated. And a lot of those platforms and the outcomes are actually delivered out of here.
Fascinating, the kind of work that is being delivered out of India. Prashray, tell us, you must have seen this environment evolving over the last many years. Tell us some of the key trends that you're seeing in terms of the growth of the GCCs and shifting expectations of GCCs.
Sure. Sujit, I think you had referred to it, Uma had referred to it earlier as well. GCCs are right now in a booming phase, right? When we see the two types of global models which are prevalent out there, GCCs being the in-house delivery organizations for global enterprises, the second model being third-party outsourcing, GCCs are growing twice as fast as third-party outsourcing, right? So definitely a model which is increasing, and that's why it's creating waves. You talked about it being mentioned in economic surveys, and really catching the eye of the government in terms of an economic impact as well, right? So there are about 1,600 GCCs in India, and about 100 get added each year, and that's a big increase. Now, generally for GCCs, and these being large global enterprises setting up 2 to 3 offices in India, we see them based in the top 5 or 6 cities, right? This is largely your Bangalore, Delhi NCR, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Chennai, and Pune. One change which we've started to see now is that GCCs are also diversifying and setting up centers in some of the tier 2 cities. So things like Vizag, Coimbatore, Kochi, Ahmedabad, picking up pace in terms of GCC space. So that's definitely one trend which we are seeing. GCCs being more open to explore this. So far, it was the third-party outsourcing firms which were more in these tier 2 and 3 cities. The trend which we are seeing from, and Uma already referred to it, that the impact which GCCs are delivering is increasing. Now, couple of decades back, it was largely about cost optimization for global enterprises. That's the way they used to see it. And that's also the kind of work which used to primarily be done out of the GCCs, right? Which was basically based on volume. Now, slowly we've started seeing a fundamental shift towards impact. So we are seeing high value work being done now. I'm talking about high-end analytics, AI, ML, deep dive business domain work. Uma's already referred to details on healthcare, but we see deep industry work on banking, multiple other sectors as well. R&D work happening for engineering GCCs as well. Products being designed from India GCCs. So the type of work is changing. And what we're also seeing is the speed to maturity of GCCs is changing. In fact, some of the new setups which you're seeing in GCCs, and Uma talked about, hey, there's GCC 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and it used to be a journey which every GCC used to traverse over a period of time, right? Now we are seeing a change that new GCC setups are straight away starting with high value, high impact work, right? So all of this is because I think the tremendous work and the impact which all GCCs have created, it's creating comfort and confidence amongst even these new entrants, right? So there is a fast spread recognition. And in fact, the challenging times of the COVID pandemic were one time where GCCs really proved their merit. At a time when global businesses were impacted, GCCs in India were there to support the business. Services were up and running immediately, helping through transformation, deploying technology, essentially oiling the wheels of the global economy, right? And there are many GCCs in India. I wouldn't name them, but they are actually the backbones of global economy in the sense that stock exchanges rely on their data, real-time data. Airlines are relying on them for flights leaving on time. Technology companies rely on every channel. We are talking about social media channels. We're talking about platforms. Everybody is relying on GCC, especially based in India, for a lot of the services which get consumed by global businesses.
I think high impact work, going into more cities and accelerating very rapidly. Many of the newer ones becoming very mature very fast compared to what it was previously. Tell me, I mean, sometimes the IT services guys and sometimes they sell. There was a period in time when GCCs sold themselves off to IT services. They say these are cycles. Sometimes, when some of these things become more commoditized, they will sell themselves off to the IT services company. But now I don't think, I mean, I see lesser and lesser people say that. They say GCCs are here to stay. They've built these very large organizations, absolutely doing complex work. There's no way that they can now be selling themselves off to IT services companies. Prashray, what do you think?
Yeah. Sujit, there'll always be one-off examples where GCCs do get sold. There are multiple reasons, right? I mean, company-specific challenges exist. Sometimes there are GCCs who struggle as well, right? And but this is rare. If you see 99% of the GCCs, they are performing fantastically. They are strategic arms, which are very important for the global enterprise. But I think it would be a fallacy to see GCCs and outsourcing as competition for each other. In fact, for a global enterprise, the way they see it is these are two ways in which they're helping the global business. Each has its own merits. Yes, there are cycles of growth for each. Till about 5-7 years back, the spurt was on the outsourcing side. Now the spurt has shifted. IT services companies are also growing. It's not a fact that they are, the work there is decreasing and it's coming to GCCs. Fundamentally, the global delivery model is getting more and more accepted. I think a lot of this is driven by global enterprises' need to find talent. And there is a big talent shortage in North America, Europe. And with the kind of not very optimistic economy, there's an increasing push to optimize cost. And with the confidence which both GCCs and IT services companies have built, global companies are sending more and more work to some of these global destinations. And of course, India is getting more than half of it, right? So it's a big thriving ecosystem. They work with each other, they feed off each other, they help each other. So yeah, we don't see them really as competition though.
Okay.
Uma, maybe you can give us an idea on how exactly GCCs are adding value to India's growth story. Prashray just gave us an idea. So 1,600 GCCs, 100 more being added every year.
Yeah. Look, the GCCs, India, like Prashray said, more than half of GCCs are actually coming to India. And I think India continues to be at the heart of the GCC growth momentum. And they deliver impact across several areas, right? Economic, human capital, innovation, social, environmental dimensions of the country. Now, totally, let's look at economic for a minute, right? The overall market, broadly about 45 billion today, expected to expand to about 110 billion, right? And that's the kind of increase we're seeing. Today, we have 20% of the top 200 Forbes global companies setting up GCCs in India. This is actually estimated to get to about 50%, right, by 2030. So you can see the economic impact that the GCCs will create. Now let's talk about employment. I briefly spoke about the fact we already have 1.6 million people engaged in GCCs, and that's going to grow up to about 4.5 million, right? Now, it's not just about the numbers, but it's also about the quality of development of the human capital, right? With the value-added work increasing, newer skills, the talent is then further skilled, they understand global business practices, and as a result of that, the quality and the depth of skills and the development of our human capital is quite significant, right? This is not to say that it does not happen in other industries, but in the GCCs, because the GCCs are fully integrated with their global parent companies, you can actually, it's a front to back model. So you have talent which has best practices from the global companies, whether it's in environment, whether it's in business processes, whether it's in product development, in many of the areas that they operate in. So the exposure and the development of human capital is pretty huge. Let's then talk about the expansion of the ecosystem. Prashray talked about, and I can see it as well. Well, 6 or 7 of our cities actually contribute to over almost 90% of the GCC ecosystem. We're clearly seeing some of the other cities coming up, right? Whether it's Ahmedabad or Jaipur or Indore or Coimbatore or Vizag or Calcutta or wherever, but that they are growing as well, right? And that's actually contributing to the growth of these cities for various reasons: diversity of skills and talent, costs are cheaper than our primary cities. So the establishment of GCCs is actually supporting the growth of some of those. And then they're eventually also delivering quite a significant and diverse return in terms of GDP, tax, all of those. And for every, there's a multiplier effect, because the minute there's a GCC, then all the ancillary services. So there is a clear multiplier effect and a higher value multiplier effect. The last one I'll talk about is the fact that collaborating with the broader business ecosystem, we have a very vibrant startup ecosystem. And the GCCs, because they are actually part of global companies, they actually work with some of the startup companies, right? For technology, for making sure that if there's a partnering opportunity to use some of that technology and some products, as a result of which, and also human capital and talent kind of some moves across sometimes from GCCs to some of the innovation and the startup systems. So they exchange knowledge, expertise, resources, and therefore the ecosystem gets a lot richer. So I think on all counts, the GCCs actually have a very positive impact and contribute to the India growth story.
And I think many of your folks, I mean, not many, but I'm sure there are people who gain experience in companies like yours and then go out and start startups of their own because they got so much technology and business experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is not just us, right? There are 1,500 GCC, some at scale. There are many startups. So we actually get people from startups coming here if something happens to the startup as well. So it's both ways.
And the kind of work that you do internally, I mean, how does it compare with, let's say, some of the pure tech companies and all? You also absolutely at the cutting edge, is it?
So I think to Prashray's point, right? So there's a growth cycle, and there's a reason why GCCs have actually grown, and the sort of belief in the idea of a GCC, right? So there are sometimes it's due to having some critical skills in house. Sometimes it's due to driving revenue and product outcomes. Sometimes it's about lower risk, right? There could be certain areas which are very critical for the company, which you don't want to necessarily give to a third party. Sometimes it's IP, right? So it really depends on the kind of work, and each GCC, depending on the business industry they operate in, could look a little different. But I think most companies have a clear view of, so there's some drivers for what we keep in a GCC to, again, we spoke about it. There could be a third-party outsourcers, and they will be GCCs. And I think they coexist in the system. Sometimes the third-party outsourcing companies do certain amount of work, and the GCCs do different work, right? And sometimes they could do the same work for different reasons, right? So I think the complexity, broadly though, the complexity of the work and the IP and the criticality of the kind of work that is done in GCCs is of higher critical value to the business, typically, than what's done by an outsourced provider.
Okay. And both of you mentioned these other cities, smaller towns into which all of you are going. I mean, give us what kind of skills are those? Enough skills there. What's the scene? Are they well prepared? Or you have to reskill them a lot? How does it work?
So here's the numbers say that over 60% of our graduates come from not the big metros, right? Over 60% of our graduates come from the smaller locations. Having said that, I think are they completely ready for being absorbed in GCCs or in any of the other global corporations careers? I think there's a lot of work that we need to do. But if the GCCs go into the second tier cities, they take with them, because one of the big areas that GCCs invest in is training and skilling. I spoke about the fact you need to understand the business, you need to understand the domain, you need to understand healthcare, for example, in Optum, right? So we spend a lot of time and energy training people. So when we actually go to second level cities or anywhere for that matter, we actually spend a lot of time training them and skilling and training and getting them up to speed. Now, to actually make this more sustainable, one of the things we're starting to think of new ways to partner with, academic institutions. We're not just going in and recruiting from them, but actually being integrated with how we skill them and get them ready, right? And clearly in second level cities where the ecosystem is not as developed as some of the major metros, that's a little harder to do, and there's a lot more work to do. But I think the fundamental talent exists. We need to invest in new ways of training and working with the ecosystem partners to actually make this to make this happen and make the talent more ready for being employed. It's a journey that has just started, in my view.
Yeah, Sujit, one is the view of what talent comes from these cities, but I think Uma mentioned that a lot of folks who are employed in these big metros, they call some of these tier 2, 3 cities as their hometowns as well, right? And we've started seeing a preference of individuals to consider moving back to some of these cities as people evaluate alternative lifestyle choices as well. So that's also become a driving factor, that you're getting some really experienced folks who've been working in these big metros now becoming the seat talent as you grow some of these centers in tier 2 and 3 cities. And while talent is one part of the picture, the other enablers, and Uma talked about an enabling ecosystem, is the fact that the infrastructure in these cities is improving. Now you're getting the same quality real estate, you're getting the same quality of internet bandwidth connections and multiple other things, right? With international connectivity for global leaders to visit in multiple of these cities, which just make it more accessible and easier for companies to consider them in their location choices as well, right? In fact, in some places, the government is giving incentives as well, because the government also realizes that growth can't be limited to just few cities, right? So one great example of this would be Gift City in Ahmedabad, where government's purposefully giving incentives to attract new companies and just de-risk some of these major metros as well, right? Which is, of course, something which is definitely in the right interest of more equitable growth throughout the country.
Okay. No, very, very interesting. Prashray, I mean, are GCCs still assessed on the basis of cost metrics and all that? They're beginning to change now. What their models? What kind of challenges are they facing?
Sure. So that's an interesting question, because so far we've been talking about how GCCs are doing this high value strategic work. But yes, fact of the matter is that many GCCs are stuck with metrics where they are mostly measured on cost and operational elements, right? A lot of this is legacy. That's how GCCs started a couple of decades back. And they've stuck with those parameters. Some of it is also driven by the fact that not all global leaders in the enterprise headquarters, whether that be in North America, Europe, other places, are bought into the GCC impact. So different leaders, now there may be one business unit, one leader, which is really happy with the GCC and leveraging it a lot. Somebody else who's skeptical and not leveraging GCC that much, right? So there is dissonance amongst the global enterprises, different individual stakeholders as well on what's the real value of GCC. Now, that being said, GCCs are punching far above their weight, right? We've got examples where entire products are being designed in India, where revenue streams are being managed, where bulk of the workforce is being hosted in the GCCs, right? Whether that's India or other places. And many GCCs are now the largest offices after the global headquarters. And there are at least 15 GCCs, 20 GCCs in India, which are the second largest global offices. There are GCCs which have like 35% of global leadership positions being based out of India GCC only, right? So there's a lot of value and impact which is being created, but sometimes measurement of metrics, that's a bit challenging. But the onus then is on GCCs themselves. Now, GCCs traditionally have been a bit hesitant, a bit shy to talk about the success. And it's up to the GCCs to communicate their increased impact and, of course, change mindsets as well. So, yeah, a lot of GCCs now, and we started seeing this change, GCCs proactively coming up, talking to the global enterprise, reaching out to different stakeholders, telling them about how a different business unit is leveraging, what's a great value work which is being done. GCC is creating case studies, coffee table books, which can be circulated to different individuals and talk about this, right? Then on the metrics side, there are GCCs in India which are measuring number of patents being filed each year. There are GCCs which are measuring innovation, proof of concepts being developed each year. GCCs are measuring impact on talent, how much globally they're driving, let's say, upskilling, reskilling. So GCCs have started doing that. And it's just about how you build it into the DNA, because what you measure is what you are. The global enterprise sees you in the same light. And then, of course, I think Uma talked about there are extremely mature GCCs, which are now no longer seen as GCCs. They're just being seen as an extension of the enterprise and just another office, right? There they've integrated so fully that oftentimes they don't even have to report metrics at an overall level, right? It's just another office. And yeah, a lot of this is trust-based. We wouldn't expect a GCC in its first year to start, with a high trust-based relationship, but when folks start seeing the results on the ground, then mindsets changed really fast.
Depends on the leaders also, is it? Those who are leading GCCs and all that?
As with any other organization, any other place, leaders are most important. You hire the right leaders, they build the right organization.
Uma, you tell your headquarters, is it? Give me this work, I'll do it and all that. How do you support it?
So it's a bit like, we talked about, showing proof of concept, showing what has happened, how is value being created, what has, how have we helped consumer experience getting better, better revenue, lower cost, all of those good things. It's an interesting, perspective, because sometimes these things automatically build trust, and therefore you get more work, to the point that Prashray was talking about earlier. There are some complete buyers because they can see the value that's been added, and they have a vision on how best to leverage the talent and the capability and the flexibility that the GCCs offer, right? And once you start, the teams in the global centers start thinking and behaving like part of the same team, right? That's when it happens seamlessly and more naturally, right? Now, in a GCC, you don't really go and sell and say, give me more work, right? Having said that, it's important to say, give me more work because I can add value to the company. You and I are interested in the same company, in the same share price, right? How can we make this better? And that's how we actually, but this presenting proof of concept, presenting success stories is a very important part of how we tell the story of what a global center can do.
Yeah, that's a big message for all those who are not there yet. Yeah, share success stories, proofs of success, proofs of concepts. Prashray, you're sitting in the Philippines. How does it? I mean, you're of course based in New York, but right now you're in the Philippines. You mentioned there are GCCs there as well. How does it compare with the India ones?
Well, I think Umar mentioned earlier, and I mentioned it too, more than 50% of the GCCs are in India, but then Philippines is the second largest location. And now slowly we've started, GCCs also start thinking about the global network of GCCs and how you can deliver value in an integrated fashion, right? So yes, Philippines is the second largest destination for GCCs. Poland is a third largest. And with different sites, we've seen GCCs, and often it's the India-based GCCs where we start seeing, thinking about how work planning is being done. And often it differs enterprise to enterprise. But then it's as we mentioned earlier, it's a thriving industry. Companies like to keep some type of work in-house. And I don't think we touched upon it earlier, but with this entire focus now on AI, Gen AI, and other stuff, companies are becoming even more conscious about keeping some of this high strategic work, which cannot be outsourced, and you can't have different outsourcing partners. You can't have your Gen AI models keep changing hands each time, right? So now what we've started seeing is that even for some of this intensive investments which companies are doing, they are preferring to do this within the GCC. Of course, there is still a large play for IT services, outsourcing companies. They provide best practices. They provide expertise when needed. They run things a lot as well. But then I think Uma mentioned this earlier. There is a lot of strategic work which consciously enterprise keep it within in-house centers. And of course, to de-risk from locations like India, locations like Philippines, Poland are choices. Then, of course, they have their own value proposition as well, right? For example, Poland, things which are limited by work which has to be done within Europe boundaries or language constraints. So different drivers for each destination, but then all feeding into the same overall goal, which is how you can create value for the global enterprise.
Drivers, but same goal. Yeah. Okay.
Uma, maybe you can give us an idea with GCCs now playing a more central role. How do you ensure that customer centricity, when the teams are so far away? And also, what are the methods and proxies that are used to deliver on outcomes in sectors like healthcare?
Yeah, it's a very important question and theme for us, and I think it's more so in healthcare because globally, in healthcare, the patient as a consumer has gained a lot of prominence, which is consumer experience and with the new capabilities enabled by technology, which is the ability, to go and search one's condition, look at what everybody is saying, say what's the right. You have a lot of information on your fingertips. So the consumer experience and the patient is at the center of this healthcare journey, right? And in Optum, we kind of recognize that completely, right? And we make sure that we invest a lot in getting our people who work not just in the global center, but even otherwise, to completely understand the patient and the patient as the consumer. Right now, specifically from a global capability center perspective, we do 2-3 things which fundamentally help with this, right? Which is, I mentioned earlier that we spend a lot of energy and we have a lot of focus on training. But for this particular thing, which is to understand the patient as consumer, we've kind of evolved and developed our training in certain ways. For example, we have interactive e-module trainings. We have domain training about US healthcare system, functional training. First, the point is to get a good understanding of the US healthcare system. The second is we make sure that we have what we call an always-on learning ecosystem, right? And we've actually evolved stuff to make this quite interesting. There's gamification, there's virtual conversations, conversation simulations, decision trees. I'll give you an example, right? There's one new curriculum that we've just designed, which combines real-life experiences with gamification. So what did we do? The new recruits actually virtually, as part of their training, spent a day with seniors and experienced what a typical day in the life of an 85-year-old is, right? Because when you're 25 years old, you really don't get it. But, by virtually spending this time, they actually saw what the activities of an 85-year-old are virtually. And the second half of that curriculum was, again, mock calls, mock tasks in the virtual space for the patient that they spend time with. So what did this do? This actually helps sensitize them, improve their servicing skills, and the engagement scores were much, much better after we actually introduced this. So this is one example. But the point is we spend a lot of energy in making sure that they understand the consumer, they understand the patient, and what the US healthcare system is like. Another one example I'll give you, like clinical reviewers, right? Anybody who's a clinician. So for them, we actually reimagined learning through a real-life clinical simulation, right, in virtual reality. So we actually simulated a clinical situation. So those are some of the ways in which we actually consistently keep making sure people are engaged with the real-life world of the customer that they actually serve. The other thing, two other things, right, which are really important in this space. One is the connect to actually deliver strategic value and innovation and better outcomes for our consumers, lower cost, better outcomes for the patients. It's really important to be connected very closely with the global teams who also manage these consumers and patients, because they are the ones providing the services and real-time physical services. So the second thing we focus a lot on is regular interaction, both physical, virtual. We have visits both sides, but physical and virtual meetups between the teams in India and in the other locations in all of the US stateside locations, and consistently continuing to engage with the teams which actually deliver frontline service to the businesses in the businesses that they operate in, right? And the third one is we make sure that we share a lot of the business and consumer insights with our teams. You know, what's happening in the US healthcare market, what are the changes? So the teams here are as involved and as engaged in understanding strategy and the business plans as anybody sitting in any global location would. And the operating rhythm, where on a regular basis, they're part of global teams, right? That really helps them keep their ear to the ground and consistently keep making sure that they are close to the businesses that they serve. And whatever they do, whether it's an innovative idea, whether it's a delivery of a service, they're making that outcome better for that patient and that one individual that they're serving.
Can you give us some idea of after learning all of this, you mentioned right at the beginning one example, but some more examples of the kind of things that they're able to do, deliver the service that is a new innovative service that's been delivered.
So, for example, we do a lot of analytics, right? So with analytics, we have the ability to understand when somebody might need a certain service ahead of time, right? And then there are tools and insights that we have, which we have developed to support the clinicians in the hospitals or the clinics, which gives them, as a result of all of the analytics, what is the next best action for this patient? So standardized care pathways, for example. So the real sacred intention of a doctor-patient interaction is time for the doctor to spend with the patient rather than doing admin tasks, right? And if using some of these analytics, if we can bring to bear for the clinician, what is the next best action for this individual? Another example would be creation of, say, an integrated digital platform. If you have interoperability of data, so all your electronic health records are in one place, right? And using analytics and models, you can understand what is the next best thing for Sujit from a treatment perspective or a care perspective. So those are a couple of examples of things that get worked on.
Got it. Okay. Prashray, tell us, so many GCCs coming in now into India, like you said, 100 a year, those numbers are really growing fast. Obviously, talent is at a huge premium, especially the really good talent. How do GCCs win in this talent war? How do they retain talent? How do they bring in, attract? Sometimes people say, the first tendency is to try and go to the pure technology companies, the Microsofts, and GCs, others who are not traditionally seen as technology companies sometimes have a hard time convincing parents and youngsters to kind of, okay. So what should GCCs do?
Well, Sujit, the few technology companies you named, they also have the GCCs in India. So again, but on a different note, completely agree, right? Talent is at the heart of everything, right? Whatever the vision is, whatever the success a GCC wants to achieve, you need talent for that. And in GCC, especially in India, it's been a conundrum because at one hand, we see facts and figures which point that there are hundreds of thousands of new graduates with the right qualifications getting added to the industry and the economy. On the other hand, we continuously keep hearing that high quality, ready to deploy talent is hard to find, right? So that being said, I think first step is attracting the right talent. Now, GCCs have gotten a lot creative in their recruitment strategies, ensuring, and they've gone to new channels, partnered with academia, offer teasers, testers, as in small internships, on-the-job trainings, just to find the right talent, right? And they're being innovative in the way they use technology as well, and the way they reach out to the new generation of talent. What kind of social media channels do you use? Are you using Instagram and others to attract talent, right? So GCCs are getting creative in the way they attract talent. A large part of attracting talent is also, do you have the right brand? Creating and investing in that brand, because this is one challenge which some GCCs face. Some of the brands, the global brands, don't have domestic business in India. So especially when you start new, it becomes difficult to convince folks on, hey, what is this company about? And GCCs have done a fantastic job in tying that global brand, that global image to the workforce in India as well. And they've also been able to drive that culture. And if I may contrast to some of the large domestic companies in India, I would say the ways of working, the employee value proposition, or the benefits offered in GCCs far outclass many of the domestic companies in India, right? And I'm talking about the large, traditional, typical large companies in India, right? So GCCs definitely have differentiated on branding, EVP, benefits, the way in which they're attracting talent. And once you get them through the door, it's about how do you retain them, how do you skill them, right? We talked a lot about skilling. GCCs invest in that. The advantage with GCCs have is they've got the global best practices, they've got global learning modules, they've got those tie-ups, and you're able to quickly translate that into an India setting. And talent is hungry for this. They're getting exposed to global best practices, getting access to resources, which they wouldn't have otherwise, right? And they stay on to learn. And that's become a large incentive for folks, because for talent, they stay to learn. They stay where they feel that they are valued. They stay when they feel that they're able to create an impact. And any GCC which cracks the code on this, I think does it quite successfully, right? So every GCC can adopt these strategies to win the talent war. That being said, I think at an overall industry level, there is still a lot of headroom for growth. And I talked about a lot of GCCs opening each year. We're talking about GCCs growing fast. The ID services companies, which you mentioned earlier, they're growing as well. So at an overall level, there is sufficient headroom for growth. And then we talked about, hey, move from beyond just the high concentrated top 6 cities to other tier 2s, tier 3s as well, right? So a lot of these factors playing into the way in which overall demand supply equation is improving. Yes, a couple of years back, till 2021, 2022, those were really tough years to get talent. And I think you and most of the viewers for this webinar would recollect that everybody was fighting for talent, and folks were getting,
4 or 5 offers
50%,
and all that.
100% hikes,
I
and
know.
all of that, right? Yeah. Now, thankfully, sanity has prevailed and we are back to normalcy. So now we are what we call the healthy growth rate on that side as well, right? So, but yeah, a lot of headroom for growth, and the talent situation has eased out in the last couple of years.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a audience question. Jayesh Pathak asks, for a fresh graduate looking to build a career in GCCs, what would you say is the long-term stability of GCCs in India? I think Jayesh is a little bit worried about
Stability of GCC. Okay, who wants to take that? Uma, you want to take a shot at that first?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things. So look, I think while GCCs are now more than 2 decades old, the growth cycle of GCCs and what we're seeing and what we expect to see as growth for the next 7 years or 6 years at least, we expect the number of GCCs to actually go up from almost 1,600, which is where we are today, to about 2,500, 2,500 GCCs in India, right? So it depends on how you define stability. These are all India stroke global locations of, Forbes companies, Fortune companies. So as stable as those companies are, and they have the backing of many of the largest global corporations. The second is important, which is the model has been tried and tested, and the growth opportunity, Prashray just spoke about it, there's a lot of headroom for growth, right? So the fact that this is going to grow, and every study, everything says that there is a lot of headroom for growth. And the third, which is really important, is now the government. We're starting to see signs. I mean, Sujit spoke about the economic survey. There are state governments which have started specifically calling out GCCs. Prashray talked about GIFT. Tamil Nadu government has some incentives for GCCs. It's part of their $1 trillion economy plan. So the government has started recognizing GCCs as a clear segment for growth, right? Now, there could be the odd GCC like this, the odd company that doesn't do well, but that is part of the business cycle everywhere. It is not unique to GCCs. And I think the last point I'll make is that India has a unique strength in GCCs because of the talent, because of the scale, because of the ecosystem, and because of the fact that the government is starting to understand this.
Prashray, you want to add to that?
I was surprised at the question because so far GCCs have been in a steady growth journey. We rarely hear doubts on the future of GCCs. At the end of the day, right? From a talent perspective, you're getting exposed to global best practices, processes, and technologies. These are highly translatable skills. You can carry them wherever you go, whether that's domestic sector company, domestic bank, or let's say government service either, right? So from a talent point of view, these are places where you can really learn quite a lot, and these are sponges where you can absorb quite a lot. So definitely from a talent point of view, great place to start their careers.
Great place to start your careers, yeah. Uma, for lateral hires, there's a question from Lakshmi Priya here asking, what are the key skills that top GCCs look for in their Indian talent for lateral hires?
So typically for lateral hires, it depends on, typically we look for whether they worked in the domain. So if it's banking and financial services or healthcare or retail or pharma, so whether you have some experience in the domain. Other than that, it's either core technologies, core skills, or core data skills and core analytics skills. The fact that many of the skills that GCCs ask for are fungible skills, right? They can be used in different domains. So when we do lateral hiring, we primarily look for some domain expertise, whether you worked in same or similar industries.
Do you hire doctors and nurses and all that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
In fact, I keep getting asked the question, and I ask them, okay, somebody who does health management or even who is a doctor, right? There could be a career outside of hospitals.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sujit, I'd like to add a bit to that. So I think the talent, especially in India, understands technical and domain skills. Extremely important are also some of the softer skills, right? I'm talking about communication, stakeholder management, because again, we talked about how GCCs are just an extension of a global team, and you've got to deal with teams and stakeholders which are spread across the globe. You have to understand their culture, their sensitivities, possibly understand products which you yourself may not have used, right? So I would say problem solving, communication, stakeholder management definitely are skills which are looked at, mid and senior level hires, and something which really differentiates good talent from average talent.
Okay.
Uma, as a leader of one of the leading GCCs in India, what's your view? What can be done to grow this ecosystem even further?
Yeah, look, the growth opportunity is there. We know that, everything going as we are seeing in front of us, we will increase, 100 GCCs a year or up to 2,500 GCCs in the next 6-7 years. So I think to continue to sustain value from this growth and continue to deliver what the GCCs set out to do, I think few things, in terms of what GCCs need to do and what the supporting infrastructure and, policies, etc. One, from a GCC perspective, be clear and set up and invest in, say, if you want to drive innovation and strategic value, decide on incubating innovation centers or setting up centers of excellence in areas that are critical to your business, right? I mean, Prashray spoke about you want to do your generative models. For example, you might want to do your digital strategy or a cloud adoption capability. So genuinely focus on some of those and build COEs, with the deliberate focus. So that could actually create and deepen the expertise and the skills within the GCC, and that would probably tell the story better in terms of what more and how can you add value, right? The second is to continue to, the GCCs need to, learn from each other, help each other to build more cost-effective operational models, whether that comes from innovation or efficiency or automation or alternate locations or lower cost locations, but to kind of continue to build the value propositions, including creating the ecosystem outside of our major metros, right? The third, and we spoke about this briefly in the earlier question, one of the biggest things that GCCs offer is the employee value proposition. Employee value proposition, for Optum, for example, is caring, connecting, and growing together. It's about how do we demonstrate how we care for you? One example through our wellness programs, or how do we enable you to connect with others, with opportunities, with growth, with impactful work, and growing and helping you grow, right? So it's about how do we actually develop and keep focusing on developing the culture and enhancing the overall employee value proposition that we can offer to talent. And the last one, and we talk a little bit about leadership, which is with the number of global roles that are going to come into India, right? There's going to be a lot of ask of leadership as well. Leaders have to, understand. We spoke about soft skills. That the ask at the leadership level is going to be hugely magnified. Do you have a much broader view, right? Do you have a global perspective? Do you understand global business? I mean, talent, talent in diverse countries come in different packages, right? So you need to understand how to get the best out of talent in different geographies and different cultures. So you really need to understand how to connect, how to build bridges with people working and living and global stakeholders in different parts of the world. So and the leaders have to have a real growth mindset. How can I be curious? How can I learn? Lastly, we need, to make sure that we continue to focus on getting infrastructure support, policy support, whether it's incentives, subsidies, help, working with government, and in all the areas that will help the GCCs function and deliver the value they've set up to do. And as I said, the government, state governments, particularly in some areas, are starting to understand that, and it's been also borne out by the economic survey recently. So I think lots of work to do. The GCCs can do a lot of work to help grow this, and lots of opportunity and headroom as well.
Yeah, build COEs, build leadership. GCCs must help each other. Prashray, anything to add? Anything that you expect the Indian government to do?
I think from a government point of view, and again, because GCCs are investments of global enterprises, and global enterprises, global investors, the thing which they're most concerned about is surprises. So as long as there are no surprises in the policies, new laws, new regulations, sometimes we do see some news on proposals and deliberations around how there can be local quotas and things like that, impact talent mobility. And a big part of the GCC ecosystem in India is about attracting the best talent from wherever can be found. Now, so some of the surprises on policies on that front, and other areas can be improved. The other thing is, I think investment in academia. And again, a lot of good quality talent in India, because it comes from government run and managed universities and colleges. I think it's on the government as well to ensure that the roadmap and the strategy which academia follows is also up to date, right? Because these days, the technologies change, coding languages change every year. There are new things. And academia has to keep up to speed to that. So I think that'll be another thing which the government will have to focus on. A lot of the growth and a lot of the opportunities which talent gets for learning, training. Thankfully, India has a thriving private player ecosystem on training, upskilling, and many other areas, right? But of course, with government also being an important player in that space, that's another thing which we expect the government to continuously invest on. And it's great that the government recognizes the contribution of GCCs, close to 50 billion, so 46 to $50 billion coming in annual year, 1.6 million people being employed. And obviously the ripple effect on the multiplier effect on the economy as well, right? So government does take it seriously. We've seen fantastic open dialogue with the government. Whenever the industry has had a concern, the government's responded on it. In fact, during COVID, and I'll just take one example, right? Because often people just have expectations and demands from government, but sometimes we don't appreciate it. But the government was so fast to allow some of the policies on work from home, especially there are restrictions in SEZs, moving equipment. Government was pretty fast and open about it, especially in India. And that helped GCCs operate faster, right? So government's doing a lot of great things, but just continuous focus on, how you're ready for the next set of challenges. I think that'll be important.
Okay, a lot of good things already happening, but stability in policy, invest in academia, invest in skilling and training. Absolutely. I know we're out of time, but a quick one, Uma, to you. There's a question from Priyanka Agarwal asking, do GCCs in India value entrepreneurial skills? Would they look at ex-founders for their job roles?
Absolutely. We want anybody who can think outside the box and innovate. And I think the best examples are startup founders.
Absolutely. So a wonderful discussion. I know GCCs have been a topic of discussion now around in the Economist magazine recently, wrote multiple stories around GCC. So it's really catching global attention. And like all of you said, I think newer and newer GCCs coming and becoming mature very fast. But a lot more can be done to speed up this environment. Thank you so much, Uma, Prashray. Really nice having you on this platform. Hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujit.